All right. Look at that, getting the rust off a little bit. We are live. Well, I'm live. I don't think anybody knows I'm here yet, but hopefully that'll be remedied soon. So, hi, YouTube. It's been a hot minute. I have to confess. Um, it's so funny because I took an accidental break from creating videos. And then I decided to post a video or two talking about that break, the nature behind that. And when I posted those in January, I had every intention of getting right back on the horse, in the saddle, whatever expression you want to use. Um, and I thought, yep, I'm going to start making YouTube videos in February. It's going to be great. And then you can see how that worked out. Time is weird, and adult life, Earth life is weird. And here I am now in July. But as they say, better late than never. But I just wanted to do a casual live stream, say hi. Feel free to say hi in the chat, those of you who are here. I know it's pretty early on in the stream, but I didn't really have a particular agenda behind this. I do have some notes pulled up just so that if things come up, if you guys give me some good ideas for like video topics, for example, or you have some really interesting questions, I might jot those down because I am looking forward to making more videos for you in the near future here. I think it's going to be a combination of making brand new content, and I'm happy to share a little like behind the scenes sneak peek at what that might look like, some of the topics I have in mind. And also, there's a couple of videos that I think I'm going to revamp, and I'm going to like delete the old one and make a brand new one because I think, as probably some of you are aware, there are currently scientists doing science. And, something that I said 5 years ago might have been true or felt true at the time, but through the continuation of science, and, just me as a human being on Earth a little bit longer and working with more people clinically and getting more experience, some things have changed, some things have been updated. So there's a couple of videos slated to at some point, but they will be replaced by a new video covering the same or similar topic, or maybe a series of videos covering that topic. In particular, the first sneak peek, I'm really excited to be launching a full series on bloating and abdominal distension. So, for clarity and why I said those separately, bloating and abdominal distension, I find that people use those terms interchangeably, but they are actually different. And it can be helpful to like distinguish between the two when you're trying to figure out what's going on. Um, and for some people, the two of those come and go together, and sometimes people will just have one and not the other. So bloating is a sensation. It's something that you feel, and it's that sensation or feeling of gas and pressure and like maybe almost a little bit crampy at times. It's the feeling like, oh my God, I feel pregnant, or the feeling of, oh my God, my belly is full of gas. But there may not be any visible sign associated with that. Abdominal distension is the visible distension, the visible growth of the belly, of the abdomen. And again, some people will feel very bloated, but their tummy looks relatively flat. Some people will be visibly distended, but they don't feel bloating at all. They feel pretty normal otherwise. And I would say more often than not, people get those two symptoms together and they coincide. But anyway, one of the series that I'm looking forward to doing in the next couple of months here is a whole dedicated series on gas, bloating, abdominal distension, and like kind of figuring out what are the mechanisms behind that. Because I'll tell you, it's not just bacterial fermentation. It's not simply like a FODMAP SIBO type of mechanism for everybody who has bloating. That can help, certainly, if you reduce FODMAP content for a time. But we're going to talk about like foods that could cause that sensation of bloating. Like, what are some of the mechanisms, like what's happening in your body, what's happening with your cells and your nervous system and your microbiome that leads to that feeling or the expansion of the belly. And then like herbs and probiotics that I have found useful for those symptoms. So really, really excited for that series in particular. again, I have a couple other big series that I'm looking forward to getting into here, so happy to share, if any of you want to inquire. But I'm gonna try to bait you into actually leaving a comment so I don't feel like a nutcase just talking to myself this whole time. So if you want more of that inside scoop, I'm happy to share, but, you gotta comment on the chat doodly bob if you want me to spill the beans. FODMAP pun intended, by the way. Mm, by the way, so for those of you who don't know, I live in North Carolina. I'm just a little bit south of the city of Raleigh, so I'm right in the middle central part of North Carolina. We're not in the mountains, we're not at the beach, we're like right there in between. Um, and it is approximately 10 bajillion degrees outside right now. Actually, I think it was going to be like 99 degrees, and the feels like temperature I think was going to be 113. So, I've got my most recent summer obsession. I recently discovered Spindrift. I don't I'm not I'll do like plain seltzer water, like, flavored ones or something, but I don't really do sweetened things typically as far as soda goes. Although I used to be a really big soda drinker. Story for another time, perhaps, unless you ask about it. But I recently had one of these at a friend's house and it was so good. And so I got a case of these at Costco and I'm pretty pleased about that. So I have my extra refreshing beverage. I've got a fan running and it's this is how hot it is here. I have like one of those freezer pack, the gel freezer packs, and I put that in a towel and I figured if I get really, really hot, I can like hug this to my body or put it on my leg away from the camera to try to cool me off. Um, because yeah, when it gets this hot, even the air conditioners can't really keep up. We might set it to what we want it to be, but it struggles to get down below a certain point. Um, oh, and then Roberto said lemon is his favorite. See, I like all of them. So I've gotten the 2 different flavor packs at Costco now. So I've tested 6 of the flavors, I guess, because each of those packs has 3 different flavors in it. My favorite thus far is the blood orange tangerine. This one is actually my favorite so far, but they're all really delightful. And again, it's like a little, I don't know, it just feels less, it tastes fresher and less artificial than we had gotten like the Wegmans brand flavored seltzers for a long time, and those are nice, but I really am enjoying these. So, I tell myself I can have one a day, usually when I come in from the garden and I'm dying of heat stroke practically because it's a million degrees. Um, oh, and then hi, Uncle Wancho. Yeah, the little hand emoji. Hi. But yeah, I guess what do you guys want to talk about? Those of you who are here. I was kind of mentally processing this and I figured, oh, if I do this kind of timing, maybe it'll like be on some people's lunch break, not here on the East Coast probably, but more like Mountain and West Coast. I figured maybe some people could catch this on their lunch break. Um, but yeah, what do you want to talk about? Do you want to know about God, I mean, my favorite K-pop groups, video ideas that I have coming up in the pipeline that I'm hoping to work on here. Um, there's an update on the IBS Freedom podcast. So for those of you who are listeners of the IBS Freedom podcast, I could spill that a little bit prematurely. The official announcement is going to come out next week, though. Um, what else? What else? I don't know. And like, what all is happening in the IBS SIBO dysbiosis world these days? Because I will confess, mm, I I don't know. I think in a lot of ways, I prefer to be a bit disconnected from the world. um, I for as long as I've had a pulse, I cannot watch the news. I can't. It's like I can't. It makes me hate humanity and makes me really frustrated and bummed and all of these icky things. And it's just like easier for me mentally to just not engage in the news. Um, but even, the older I get in particular, I just can't find myself going on social media much at all. The only social media that I really truly enjoy is YouTube, and it's largely K-pop and comedy stuff that I watch and foraging stuff that I watch on here. Um, but yeah, I'm not really on social media much at all. I don't remember the last time I scrolled Instagram. And I don't remember the last time I peeked my head in like the IBS stool testing, dysbiosis, et cetera, Facebook groups. So kind of curious, like what all is going on in that world. If anybody wants to give me like the Cliff Notes version of what I might have missed. Because I will confess, for all that my personal preference and my nervous system's personal preference is to stay out of the loop, I do acknowledge that it could be useful, especially as a content creator, to like be aware of what's going on in an industry and like kind of catch on to trends and like make relevant videos about current trends. So if anybody wants to catch me up, I'm just curious what's going on in the world. I know, God, it was maybe like 2 years ago. I remember there was talk all of a sudden about like camel milk curing SIBO. And I remember I had a FODMAP Freedom student come ask if she should purchase camel milk. And I was like, what? um, anyway, oh, we have a comment. So Beyond Radiant, hi. I would love more information on foods that are good for people with SIBO other than low FODMAP. I have methane dominant SIBO, presumably. Yeah. So here's the weird thing about food and SIBO is that there has yet to be a single study on humans or animals for that matter that I'm aware of. There has yet to be a single study showing that we can treat or starve SIBO with the diet. Really what you're going for any therapeutic diet that you might be thinking of is going to be symptomatic management. Um, so if something like the low FODMAP diet or, the Cedar Sinai low fermentation diet or whatever flavor you want to go for, if one of those diets helps you manage symptoms and helps you like live your life and do things to improve your life and improve your health, then that could be useful. But don't get tied up in the idea of like treating the SIBO or killing the SIBO because that is a big old internet farce from what I can tell. What I will say regarding methane and low FODMAP specifically is if you have methane done, let's call it EMO, right? IMO. If you have intestinal methane overgrowth, I'm going to just wager a bet that you probably deal with some constipation. And if that is the case, there is lesser quality evidence that the low FODMAP diet is going to help you manage your symptoms. So let me rephrase this another way. When they've studied the low FODMAP diet, they have shown that low FODMAP is much more effective at managing the symptoms for IBS-D, so diarrhea-based symptoms, and IBS-M, mixed presentation where the person kind of yo-yos back and forth between diarrhea and constipation. There is very weak quality evidence that low FODMAP will help people with constipation. Now, a handful of some of those people are going to have EMO, some of them are not, some are going to have like idiopathic constipation or pelvic floor stuff, whatever it might be. But just for what it's worth, like you could try a therapeutic diet to try to manage bloating, for example. But there is much weaker evidence. I'm less confident telling you that any of those like low fermentation, low FODMAP style diets are going to manage symptoms if you struggle with constipation. So you could try it, but A, you're not going to be starving or treating the SIBO as far as we could tell right now based on the evidence. And B, I'm less confident that that will help you. Yeah, so hopefully that was helpful. I know long-winded, but hopefully that was helpful. Let's see. You're welcome. Let's see. Roberto 8AG. I recently read a new study about the connection between hypothyroidism and SIBO. So it seems that SIBO is another long-term complication for my terrible, bad, poorly treated hypothyroidism. Maybe. So I guess here's two things I would say. And I actually have a couple of videos dedicated to this topic. If you just go on my channel, search for thyroid, hypothyroid, some mixture thereof, and you'll find those videos. I think that there are two factors to kind of think about in that case. Years ago, God, I forget how many years ago it was. Maybe 5 years ago. So like, 2020, 2021, somewhere in that range, I think, maybe. There was a study that came out that showed that SIBO, put an asterisk in that, SIBO was associated with levothyroxine prescription. So levothyroxine being like a synthetic T4. It's what's usually used as like first line therapy to treat hypothyroidism. Um, and everybody lost their shit. Everybody in the SIBO forums, by the way, pun not intended by acknowledged, but acknowledged. Everybody lost their damn minds because there's a lot of people on that medication, right? And so there was a lot of talk both in the lay people forums, like the SIBO forums, for example, and the practitioner forums at that time about, oh my God, I knew Levo was evil. We should get all of our patients off of Levo. And I made this video about this topic years ago, and I said, whoa, 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 wait a minute though. So first of all, the asterisk that I mentioned, the asterisk is remember that SIBO is being way overdiagnosed right now. So when they say that SIBO diagnosis was correlated with something, you have to ask, how did they arrive at the conclusion that these people had SIBO? Almost always it's going to be a breath test. And the bar has been, well, first of all, breath testing is astonishingly inaccurate and yields tons of false positives. But even if they did it with an aspirate based study, right, where they go in and they suck out the juice and they put it on a petri dish and they count up the bacteria, even if they diagnose the SIBO that way, the bar has been lowered so many times. At this point, any Joe Schmo could be diagnosed with SIBO. May or may not be true SIBO, may or may not be clinically relevant to them. It might not be causing any harm to them or symptoms, but we've lowered the bar. So back in like the 80s and 90s, to get diagnosed with SIBO, like that early kind of research on SIBO, that was 10 times 7 to 10 to the ninth CFU per milliliter of fluid, right? And you remember how like exponents work. Then it was lowered down to 10 to the fifth power, which is already, what would that be? 1,000 times lower, right? 110. Yeah, 1,000 times lower. So if we go from 10 to the seventh down to 10 to the fifth, that's already 1,000-fold lower bacterial counts. Then some years ago, they lowered that, or a lot of studies lowered it down to 10 to the third, which is another 1,000-fold lower. So when I say that the bar has been lowered and everybody and their damn brother is being told that they have SIBO, I really truly mean it. But anyway, my rambling point is, I think probably what it is that prolonged states of inflammation or prolonged states of mismanaged autoimmunity is probably going to be more associated with SIBO than the actual medication itself. I personally don't think that thyroid prescriptions cause SIBO. What I think is if you've had Hashimoto's for, 20 years and the only treatment you've ever received is levothyroxine, and you're developing other autoimmune conditions and you're inflamed and malnourished and stressed and your sleep sucks and like you've got all of these other kind of things wrapped up with that autoimmune condition, I think all of that might predispose you to SIBO. But again, like we're basing a lot of this off of faulty testing. And so it's really hard to say with a great deal of confidence if that even is true. So anyway, all that being said, because I know I tangented off a little bit, and I'm not sure if that was actually your question or intent to bring that up. We've known for a long time that one of the symptoms of hypothyroidism is constipation. And we've known that hypothyroidism or low thyroid states can slow down your motility. And I am a firm believer that the reason why somebody might develop SIBO is because of poor motility. And we're not getting those cleansing, sweeping waves, the MMC, and we're not clearing the debris out of the intestine like we normally would. So by way of low thyroid function, poor motility, slow motility, leading to constipation and possibly bacterial overgrowth, like that mechanism makes sense. But the minute you get the thyroid labs normalized and you treat the hypothyroidism, right? So like a hypothyroid person who has a normal TSH because they're now on medication, then that motility disruption should go back to normal. So somebody with hypothyroidism who is well managed and well medicated should not have the motility impairments of somebody who has been wandering around for 5 years and did not know that they had hypothyroidism. And this, sorry, forgive me, who was it? Roberto, you had said that it was mismanaged. So I assume that that meant that you weren't really well medicated or well managed for a period of time there. So that could very well be the case for you. But those are two little facets that I wanted to share. But look on my channel. Look up thyroid or hypothyroid or like levo, some combination of those keywords, and you should be able to find it. Let's see. Yeah, so Mike Walter, so 10 to the ninth in the duodenum, is that even possible? I don't know if it was specifically in the duodenum or if it was in the jejunum or the ileum. So I don't know if it was like proximal SIBO or mid or distal SIBO, but it is. But this is the thing too. Going back to the point that everybody and their damn brother is being told that they have SIBO these days. And it's just, in my opinion, it's a very trendy diagnosis these days. Back in the day, it was genuinely a rare, serious condition. And that's where you start hearing about cases of severe malabsorption, severe B12 deficiency, iron deficiency, various vitamin and mineral deficiencies. Like these people were very, 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 very sick. And they had genuine bona fide malabsorption. They had real like villus atrophy. You start hearing about that where it can almost mimic celiac disease because the villi are shaved down to nubs, like leaky gut on steroids, right? Because it was a really bad situation. But virtually the only way that people got SIBO, like the only real root cause for that flavor of SIBO back in the day, where it was that extreme, was something called short bowel syndrome. And to be clear, people still walk this earth with short bowel syndrome. That's still a thing. But yeah, short bowel syndrome, or maybe like certain types of GI surgery, could lead to this really extreme form of SIBO. Again, I can't really speak to the location, which of the three parts of the small intestine it might have been in. But yeah, that's why back in the day, when you hear about like, oh, SIBO causes malabsorption, SIBO causes B12 deficiency, SIBO causes XYZ, a lot of that is based on what I would call like old world SIBO. So like SIBO that was diagnosed in the 80s and 90s and the research we had then. And that's like a very, very different animal. That's a very extreme version of what, and then we're trying to apply that information to people who have, 10 to the third or 10 to the fifth CFU per ml. And it's like these aren't the same things. I really think that what we're talking about nowadays and labeling as SIBO needs a different name. I think that the name SIBO is not serving us well. I have proposed the name SIMD, SIMD, small intestinal microbial dysbiosis, in part because I think that encompasses a bit more, right? Like yeast and viruses and other stuff that live in the gut. But also, it appears that in people who are kind of walking around with SIBO now, it appears that the dysbiosis rather than the overgrowth is the thing that's really contributing to their symptoms. And that's really what we ought to be treating, is the small intestinal dysbiosis rather than chasing this idea of it being an overgrowth. Yeah, so I like the name SIMD. It doesn't roll off the tongue quite as well as SIBO, but I do think that these two things need completely separate names, or at least names that are dissimilar enough that we can differentiate between the two. Let's see. Roberto said, you made those videos 5 years ago. Again, did you double check that? That was my off the cuff saying that, but I'm pretty sure that is about the range. Is excessive burping a big tell for SIBO? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I think it could potentially be like a proximal SIBO, like a SIBO in the duodenum kind of situation. But it could just be, poor gastric emptying, some other flavor of dysmotility. It could be a symptom of H. pylori. It could be a symptom. I think it's a symptom of gastroparesis. So I don't think it's a slam dunk for SIBO personally, belching. I will say, I was just telling somebody this the other day. I had a weird blip years ago. Again, I think it was like 2021 because it was on the back end of the pandemic. I had this weird blip for a few weeks where I was belching all the time. You would have thought that I was drinking soda nonstop the way I was belching. And I was finding myself walking around the house, like doing this kind of a thing, trying to get the burp up. And sort of the way that I handle stuff with my body, generally speaking, if it's not a true emergency, is like I will just kind of watch and wait and observe it for a week or two before I think about taking any sort of action. And I'll just kind of observe and collect that data. So I kind of watched it and I thought, God, this is weird and kind of annoying. And I did that for about 2 weeks. And then I started figuring out, okay, it's not going to go away on its own. And I started, thinking through like what could be going on. And I just remember I went to my office because I had a brick and mortar office at the time. And I grabbed the first bottle of herbal prokinetic I could find off the shelf because I hypothesized that it was probably like a motility disruption sort of thing, maybe due to stress because we were just coming out of the pandemic. And I grabbed the first bottle of herbal prokinetic off the shelf at my office and I started taking that, and it remedied the symptom almost immediately. I took the herbal prokinetic for maybe like 2, 3 weeks, and then I ran out, and then the symptom never came back. But from my n equals one, at least, I think that belching um, can sometimes be like a gastric emptying motility ish sort of thing. I never did anything to treat H. pylori, treat SIBO, kill SIBO, any of that. I just simply gave my motility a little bit of a boost temporarily, and then the symptom resolved itself. Granted, I only had it for like 2 or 3 weeks when I took action, so maybe it wasn't like super well set. If you've had the symptom for longer, months or years or decades, then maybe you would need a longer stint with that type of support. But that was my experience with that symptom, for what it's worth. Um, and then Mike Walter said, also, hello, missed you. Yeah, you know what? It's really nice to be back here and chatting with some of you guys. I just, as I shared those couple videos, it's just been a hell of a year and a half. Lot of stuff. And one of many things is like I'm realizing um I want everybody in the world to get along, and I want everybody to get along with me. And like, I don't want to rub people the wrong way or get into confrontation or have people think poorly of me. And there's this thing in neuroscience, or maybe more psychology, called the negativity bias. So basically, our nervous systems are built to pay way more attention to negative stuff than we are to positive stuff. So the evolutionary example I could give is, picture you were like a caveman or a cavewoman living, 5, 10,000 years ago. And you're wandering around and you're like collecting berries from a bush or something, right? And it's a crystal clear blue sky, beautiful clouds, the sun is the temperature's perfect. There's a little bit of a breeze, there's birds chirping, a butterfly flies by and lands on your shoulder and gives you a kiss on the cheek. There's the giggles of your children playing. There's a babbling brook with fresh, clean water. You're eating delicious berries. You have all of these data points that are wonderful and good. And then you hear a low growl from the bushes behind you. In that moment, would it be more advantageous for my nervous system to pay attention to the butterfly and the children giggling and the crystal clear blue skies? Or would it be more advantageous to listen to the low growl in the bushes from behind me, right? We have survived this long, largely because our nervous systems learned you have to pay attention to the bad stuff. And so how that kind of shows itself in the real world, because oftentimes we don't need that sort of survival strategy anymore, right? Like I am sitting on my little ergonomic, rocker chair, talking on YouTube, sipping on a seltzer. Like, I don't really need that wiring at the moment. Perhaps if I was like walking dark streets alone at night or something, I would need to listen for things. But 9 times out of 10 in modern days, we don't really need that wiring as much. But how it can present is you get 99 emails, and they're all benign and fine. Some are even lovely and nice, but then you get that one really nasty, awful email. And it's like the nervous system just goes zoop and remembers that and focuses on it, right? And similarly with like YouTube comments and social media DMs, like I get a lot of really lovely comments of people saying, wow, that makes so much sense. This is a great video. Thank you so much, yada, yada. And I so appreciate all those comments, but also I could still like recite practically word for word, probably a lot of the negative comments that I've gotten. And it's like, I'm aware of it. I'm aware of the negativity bias. I don't like it. I'm trying to turn it off actively, but it's there. And so I think that one of many, 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 many facets of what's been going on with me in recent years is just like being a little bit tired of the internet and a little bit tired of social media, and just like being really painfully aware that social media and the anonymous nature of social media and the internet tends to bring the worst out in people, and there's just those handful of nasty comments, and my nervous system just could not take it anymore, honestly. And so it's a work in progress still. Like, I'm not saying that I'm totally out of my funk, but I think this is a really good step for me here. So thank you all for participating. Um, Beyond Radiant, what helps with slow motility? So I have a lot of videos about that and podcast episodes. If you look at the IBS Freedom podcast, for example, um, I'm a really, really big fan of herbal prokinetics. So a prokinetic is something that regulates and to some degree stimulates motility. Um, I think as it comes up a lot on this channel and with this crowd with like IBS, SIBO, bloating, et cetera, kind of stuff, we tend to focus a bit more on like regulating or stimulating motility in the small intestine so that we're hopefully clearing away bacterial overgrowth. And that's what I think that prokinetics are especially good at. I have seen herbal prokinetics help people with constipation, and I've actually seen herbal prokinetics help people with diarrhea as well. Um, and like have more of a colon kind of mechanism and regulating bowel movements. But yeah, prokinetics pretty high up. If I could interpret slow motility as constipation specifically, there are so many good probiotics for that purpose. Oh my God, tons of good probiotics. Um, Let me think. And I think I have a video on my channel about like top probiotics for constipation. So if you just search constipation, or I think I might even have a playlist of for constipation specifically. If you go on my channel and look for the constipation videos, a lot of that will be applicable probably. Um, and then, magnesium, if you're magnesium deficient, certainly a supplement of magnesium is probably going to be helpful. We actually just figured that out with my daughter. My daughter, again, all of the stuff wrapped up in the last, year or so for me. My daughter started having really frequent tummy aches, and it's I started doing some herbal stuff and some nutritional stuff and like fiber and giving her, some PHGG, for example. And like it helped, but not all the way. And we were kind of triaging that and figuring out. And we took her in for blood work to rule out celiac disease, since that sort of stuff is pretty strong on my side of the family. And I'm pretty sure I'm a celiac myself. And we ended up, I kind of thought about it a little bit more clearly and thought, you know what? She's not like, she's a good eater. My daughter will eat cabbage and broccoli and like a lot of really healthy stuff. But she doesn't get a lot of foods in her diet that are really great for magnesium specifically. And she, like, for example, she really hasn't ever done nuts and seeds other than peanut butter, which is technically not a nut. Um, she only very, very, very recently, like 2 weeks ago, took a shine to walnuts, and I'm astonished and amazed by that. But I got her started on a magnesium gummy, and now that's helped tremendously with pooping. So if you're deficient in magnesium, or if you really don't eat a lot of magnesium in your diet, then even something like magnesium could be really helpful. And then there's also like herbal stimulant laxatives, but you want to be careful not to overdo those for an extended period of time, because you can get somewhat dependent on them, probably like the stimulant laxatives that are, medications. So yeah, lots of options. Mm. Also, it's worth mentioning, um, fiber intake is extremely important for constipation and for emo and for states of dysbiosis, including but not limited to SIMD, the small intestinal microbial dysbiosis idea that I mentioned earlier. So if you're not eating enough dietary fiber, then that would actually probably be fiber, magnesium, and water consumption would probably be the first three things that I would look into. Um, yeah, there's probably more I'm forgetting, but yeah, and then you could maybe get into like herbal prokinetics, maybe herbal laxative kind of stuff, and then I would start thinking about like prescription prokinetics, like medication type of options. But there's a lot of natural stuff. Oh, and probiotics would be in there too. Let's see. Mike says, I'm updating myself constantly on GI stuff, and I trust only Dr. Pimentel for now. Yeah, I mean, he's done a lot for the SIBO community, certainly. Yeah, um, that's the thing, right? Is like the scientists are still doing science. We're still trying to figure things out. There's new research coming out every day, which is both wonderful and daunting at the same time, right? Um, but yeah, it's similarly, I'm trying to keep myself updated as much as I can. Um, yeah, and you're welcome, Beyond Radiant. She said, thanks so much. Let's see. Random Talk says, I just finished a course of antibiotics for emo. I've been hearing mixed things on taking probiotics when you have SIBO. I don't want to take them and then they overpopulate my small intestine. Yeah, so this is actually one area where I specifically vehemently disagree with Dr. Pimentel. As an example, I know he's a really big proponent of telling people that they can't take probiotics when they have SIBO. I don't know what the discrepancy here is between what I'm seeing on PubMed and what he is verbally telling people in webinars, but the state of the research, like when you look on PubMed and you read the research studies and the clinical trials, the state of the research is overwhelmingly positive for the use of probiotics for SIBO. It's been shown repeatedly across many studies, across many different types of probiotics, that probiotics can help alleviate the symptoms that we're attributing to SIBO, such as bloating, but also it can reduce breath gas count and help to cure or treat the SIBO itself, if you believe in breath testing. So yeah, so I don't know what to tell you, but yeah, I think that a lot of the fear mongering on that, a lot of the hesitation on that comes from Dr. Pimentel because he said repeatedly for many, many years, and he could be kind of an asshole about it too and be like, oh, like kind of condescending, like, oh, you already have too many bacteria and you're just going to add more bacteria. Oh, that's preposterous. And I'm just like, bro, I don't like, do you not have PubMed? I don't know. I think he's brilliant and he's done a lot for the SIBO community, but that's one where I like vehemently disagree with him. Mm. Um, Mike says, I just submitted a sample for my first gut test using shotgun sequencing. Hopefully it'll have results next week. Yeah. Yeah, I think that stool testing is fun. It's funny because if you look at the progression of my YouTube channel over the years, right? You'll notice these like distinct kind of patterns with my content creation. In the early days, I focused hugely on SIBO and I focused hugely on like stool testing and interpreting stool tests and like, here's how to interpret this test. Here's how to interpret this test. And I would do like split sample testing. And, I'm the longer I practice, the more people I interact with, the more I'm seeing that that information is really fun and cool. And sometimes it can be clinically relevant and actionable. Um, but there's just so much that we don't know about the microbiome yet, and so much that we don't know about like stool testing and what technology is really best for measuring this versus that, and what should we be testing for, what should we be paying attention to, where should the normal reference ranges be, right? Like who decides what a normal reference range is? I've got news for you. The lab that is making a profit off of your stool sample or you buying the stool sample, they're determining their own reference ranges. It's not supported by science whatsoever. It's they decided that that's where it is. And I can give one example because I know for a fact, and it's not any dig against the company itself, just to be clear, because I've used their stuff before. But I happen to know, so Genova Diagnostics, which is located in North Carolina, out in Asheville, for their test, the GI effects, I remember I had a lady, this was years ago, probably 7, 8 years ago, and she had worked with another functional doctor, like an integrative MD. And she had been given repeat courses of prescription antibiotics to try to treat a bacteria that was out of range or overgrown on her GI effects stool test. And they did prescription antibiotics, repeat testing, prescription antibiotics, repeat testing. They had done this at least 3 times by the time I saw her. And the bacteria in question, I'll never forget it because it still irks me. The bacteria in question is pseudoflavinifractor. And I looked at it and I'm thinking to myself, and I'm like, God, I don't think I know anything about that bacteria. Like, I wouldn't even know what phylum it belonged to, except for the fact that they organized it by phylum and they kinda gave me that gimme information. But I was like, "Huh, well, let me go on PubMed and read about this bacteria that we're trying to chase so hard. Like, what the devil's going on?" And at the time, again, 7, 8 years ago, at the time, there was 0 human studies, like, referencing. I think when I put that name into PubMed, I think that a total of 12 studies came up, and, like, 9 out of the 12 were done in broiler chickens or broiler hens, and then the remaining 3, it was, like, more of a theoretical paper about the microbiome, and then they mentioned that bacteria once in the whole paper or something. But, I called the lab and I talked to one of the, technical support, lab support people, and I asked point blank, I said, "Why is that bacteria even listed on this test? I can't find a lick of human evidence saying that it's clinically relevant or that it does anything good or bad." And literally the answer that they gave me was, "Well, Genova thought it was important." Was like, "Okay, cool." And then, I forget if it was that same conversation or if it was I learned this somewhere else, but, Genova, as an example, they determine what is normal and they determine reference ranges for their tests. When they launch a new test, they have all of their employees do the test, and then they basically do a bell curve analysis of all of their employees, and whatever, is in the middle of that bell curve, that's what they deem to be the normal range. But we don't know if these people are exceptionally healthy, right? Like, how many of you have a job and you go to your job and you still suffer from constipation or bloating or migraines or eczema or whatever, right? And so it's like it's a really interesting methodology, I guess. But my rambling point once again, sorry, not sorry, is I think that stool testing can be really fun. Sometimes it can give something clinically actionable, and if you find something that feels relevant on a test like that, you always have my blanket blessing to, like, try to tinker with it and try to treat the thing if you feel that it's relevant. Um, but just know that there's a lot that we don't know about stool testing, and there's a lot up in the air as far as, like, how we interpret the data that we get back and what we believe about our microbiome based on that data. And, um and also, for that matter, when you find something on a test, whether it's good or bad, we don't know for a fact if it's contributing to symptoms. We know that it's there and we know that you have symptoms independent of each other. The way that you test if they're related is you try to treat the thing, and if you are able to successfully treat the thing and the symptoms go away, then you can logically deduce that the thing was causing the symptoms, right? Um, but yeah, so just take stool testing with a bit of a grain of salt, I suppose, is the point of this rant. Again, I think that it can be useful, especially in, like, more puzzling or extreme cases where, like, you're really kind of grasping at straws trying to figure out what's going on. Um, but be careful not to take it as gospel. I guess that's my point. There. Cheers to that. I am um, I'm happy that shotgun sequencing is becoming more of the norm though. Um, So I think that, there's more and more companies that are out there, bringing that sort of to the market, so to speak. And I am excited to see. Also, the research is starting to move in that direction. There was a really, really, really extended period of time where, like, every microbiome research study used 16S testing, which is fine. Like, it's fine. It's cheap. It gets the job done for the most part, and it can definitely get down to genus level, just maybe not species level, and certainly not strains. But now it's nice that shotgun sequencing is becoming more popular, not only in the consumer market, but we're getting more and more research studies that are using shotgun sequencing, and we can get that really detailed information from, like, a research standpoint too, which I appreciate personally. Let's see. What else? What else? Um, yeah, and then Mike had said, "It's very difficult to find in Europe." The shotgun sequencing. Most companies just refuse to move on from PCR and 16S. Yeah. Yeah, again, and, a big part of that is that 16S is cheap comparatively, and I will confess, when you read microbiome research studies, the absolute bulk of the research we have on the microbiome is using 16S. So here's kind of the two sides of the same coin, okay? Is that there are limitations with the data that we can get from 16S testing. Like I said, it's 16S is really good from the phylum level down to about the genus. So it can get down to like telling you, here's how much lactobacillus you have, here's how much bifido you have, right? It's so on the species level. Like again, it gets the job done. It might not be perfect, but it can get down to like differentiating Lactobacillus acidophilus versus, Lactobacillus rhamnosus as an example, two different species within that same genus. Um, but 16S cannot do strain specific. It's not going to tell you, what particular strain of Lactobacillus acidophilus, for example. Um, so it's limited, but again, it's cheap and it's been around forever. And so my one concern from doing shotgun sequencing more and more is that we are we're learning about the microbiome and we're building our worldview on the microbiome. And we are like conceptualizing and understanding this ecosystem based on science that was done using one technology. And then we are trying to take that information and apply it across a completely different type of technology. And my concern is that we're comparing apples to oranges. And I'm worried that we're going to be in like a weird time in history where a lot of the microbiome research we've had for the last 20 or 30 years might not translate directly into these new stool tests. And so, if we're just trying to understand the microbiome purely using this newer technology, the shotgun sequencing, we have way fewer studies to draw on to understand it. Right? It's for those of you who don't know, my brain loves metaphors and analogies and like wacky explanations. It's okay. I think I made the point. Maybe I don't need some wacky metaphor to explain it, but yeah, I fear that we're getting into like an apples to oranges comparison sort of situation, and that maybe we're going to come to some incorrect conclusions using the new testing because we're basing it off of the old testing methodology. But that's just where I go back to, just don't take it as gospel. Like, look at it as data, say, okay, neat, cool. Oh, I think this might be actionable. This might be relevant. And then, like I said, you go forth and you try to work with that information to some degree. But if you're finding that it's not helpful, or if it's not as like profoundly impactful as you had hoped that it would be, then you can kind of just like shrug it off and move on, I guess. So I have a lot of opinions on stool testing. And again, like you'll notice in the beginning years of my channel, I talked about stool testing a lot, and I really haven't talked about stool testing in a few years on here. And that's part of why I think, what is, oh God, where is it? There's this curve. I've seen this meme and infographic online where it's knowledge versus confidence, I think. Right? So it's like the person with no knowledge, like zero knowledge on a topic, has very little confidence, right? It's like if you ask me to go work on a car engine, I would be very non-confident in my ability to do that. Then as you gain more and more and more knowledge, typically confidence goes up with knowledge, right? So if I took some classes and read some YouTube videos and read a book and got some experience and like shadowed a mechanic, the more experience I got with that field, the more confident I would be in my abilities to do that skill. But then at some point, when you start reaching like expert level, or you get like really deep in the weeds with any given topic, your confidence starts to drop because it's like you arrived at this like high place, and then you look down of the valley of everything that you don't know and you'll never know in your lifetime because there's simply too much in this. And I kind of feel like I'm there with stool testing, where like I was so excited about it and confident, and I was keen to talk about it for so long. And then I got to this point where I was like, holy crap, there's so much we don't know and we might not know in my lifetime. And like I started seeing these issues where it became clear that what you're seeing on these tests and SIBO tests and leaky gut tests, all of these tests for that matter, like what you're seeing may or may not be clinically relevant and actionable. And like, oh my God, what do I do with this information? Um, anyway, verging into like existential crisis kind of moment there, but hopefully useful. Let's see. Oh, hold on. Hold on. How do I read this one? I'm going to skip around a teeny bit. Oh God. Hold on. Lavin violin. I'm sorry. I feel that's such a cute screen name, and I feel like I just butchered it. Lav, I'm going to call you Lav. Lav just said, "Hi, Dr. DiNezza. Thank you for your channel." Shoot, you're welcome. I have a question. I'm recovered from SIBO and feel pretty great on a daily basis. That's great, but still struggling with bloating after I eat anything and weight gain. Do I have any Thanks. Yeah, the pronunciation butchering. Do I have any advice for bloating post SIBO? Yes and no. So I had shared, and now that there's some more people who have joined us, by the way, I'll make this offer again. Um, I've been mapping out the topics that I want to do videos on in the coming months. And I've got what I think is a pretty fun list for myself. I decided with all of my funky stuff, I decided that I needed to pick topics that I was genuinely interested in and I find genuinely fun and interesting to do. Because a lot of what's going to go into it is me researching and reading about these various topics, right? So if I'm bored with what I'm reading, it's the video is just never going to get done. But I was sharing earlier one of several multi-part series that I'm going to be launching on this channel soon. Well, soon in a few months, is a full series on bloating and abdominal distension. So bloating being the sensation or the feeling of gas and pressure and bubbles, and abdominal distension being the visible growth of the belly, like the preggo belly look. And I'm going to be doing a deep dive on both of those very, very soon. And I had mentioned earlier when there was just like a couple people on, I know that what gets talked about the most is the idea of bacteria fermenting, carbohydrates, and then it's, the bacterial fermentation causing gas, and that's the whole mechanism. And that's honestly, that's why so many people care about SIBO, I think, right? And that's not the only thing that will cause bloating. I will tell you that. So we're going to be going into the mechanisms of what is happening in the body and the gut and the nervous system and that sort of stuff as it pertains to bloating. And then we're going to be talking about the mechanisms and the why behind it, and then get into strategies and tools that can help with bloating. Yeah. Mm. That being said, it's no secret, especially if you followed me for a little while, I really, really love herbal prokinetics. So if you just type into my channel, if you do a search for prokinetic, I would look at that probably first. I think that's a really effective way to help with bloating for a lot of people. It's not going to be 100% effective across the board, but when I've done my prokinetic speed dating for years, I think the last time I looked at the data, because I collect all this information, I think the last time I looked at that, it was like 93% of people found a prokinetic that they liked and they felt helped with either pain, bloating, distension, or poops. So for what it's worth, herbal prokinetics for the win. So if you search that on my channel, you should find some videos, and that would probably be my first thing. Yeah. Let's see. And I'm glad that Lav, as I have now dubbed you, said, amazing. I love that. Also confused about probiotics and whether I should be taking prokinetics. Again, look, mind reader. Thanks so much for your content. It was a big part of my recovery, your success stories in particular. Yay. Yeah. Isn't it nice to know that it can be done? I mean, honestly, like some of the success story posting is self-serving too, because then you're like, wow, she helped them. But another part of it is that a lot of people get in this really dreadful funk of believing that their condition is incurable and they're doomed and they have a complex case and there's nobody that can help them. And I there are very, very few and far between cases where I felt like that was really genuinely true. Um, there's also this human element of like, just because I think I figured out what's going on doesn't mean the person is going to take my advice and run with it and apply it. And that's like how people use the advice I give them and what results they get in that regard. Like that's a whole nother wild card. But as far as like cases where I was truly stumped, I had no idea why they still had symptoms. And I was genuinely really scratching my head and didn't know what to do. Like I could think of maybe two in the entirety of my career where I felt like that was the case. So yeah, I mean, it can be done. It's what I think happens, and one of the many, many reasons why I'm so against Reddit forums, Reddit threads, whatever they're called, why I'm so against like forums and Reddits and Facebook groups for these conditions is they become echo chambers. So if if you think about it, the people who are in those groups and are actively invested in the groups and are actively posting in the groups, they have one of two reasons why they would do that. I mean, there's a third, but it almost never happens. The two main reasons that people participate in groups and Reddit threads and forums and, whatever's is A, because they're going to make money doing it. So sometimes you'll see clinicians and nutritionists go in there and kind of plug their services. For example, if you look at like the SIBO SOS um, Summit series, like they have their own dedicated Facebook group. And Siobhan Sarna is posting in there really frequently, and she'll have like Seebecker and Pimentel in there. They're doing that because, and I'm not saying that this makes them bad people or anything, but they're doing that because it's their business, right? Like they're like Siobhan Sarna isn't maintaining that Facebook group and doing the SIBO SOS things purely out of the goodness of her heart. Like she makes money when you purchase the recordings or you purchase the webinars with them. So that's number one, is that people are in there to make money, and that's neither a good or a bad thing. It's neutral. It's just a fact of life. And the other main reason is because they are still sick and struggling and miserable themselves. The third reason that's a possibility, but it almost never happens, is that somebody genuinely is there out of the goodness of their hearts and they're really just trying to help people and there's nothing in it for them. They really just want to give back to the community and they themselves, moved on and are cured. Unfortunately, and it's human nature, it is what it is, we're all busy. That almost never happens. So what you get is you get this echo chamber in, again, like Facebook forums, Reddit threads, whatever. You get these echo chambers of people who are really sick, really desperate, really frustrated, and they are the ones who are dealing with the thing, and they probably have been there for a long time. And so you get this echo chamber effect of like, I'm still sick. Nobody's helped me. I haven't found the cure. Why am I still like this? What do I do? And it's that all day, every day. It's just that in those groups. And the people who got better left the group or they unfollowed the group and they're not participating in the conversations anymore. Right. And then you get the occasional like promotional post from somebody who's trying to make money. And that's how these groups work. So anyway, and again, it's like this was a lot of years ago, when I was planning my wedding, I was following a lot of wedding planning Pinterest boards, right? I was gathering ideas. I was looking at photos because I was in that phase of my life. I was planning a wedding. I was buying stuff for the wedding. I was thinking about what I wanted and what colors and lace and doilies and all of that crap. The minute I got married and I, went back on Pinterest, I probably unfollowed all of the wedding shit because it was no longer relevant to me. I already did the thing. I got married. I had the wedding. There was no reason for me to still follow the Pinterest wedding boards, right? I'm not going to comment on every single pin that I saved and say like, this was a great, helpful pin. I got married. Here's a photo of my tables. Like, nobody has time for that. Nobody has time for that. So anyway, so I think it's important to have these conversations and have like, success stories on the internet because again, these forums and these groups where a lot of you spend a lot of your time, and even I would say the YouTube comment section as well, a lot of it becomes an echo chamber and it is not a fun echo chamber. It is a very depressing, sad place to be. Um, so yeah, you need to know that it's possible to bounce back and recover and be healthy and what health looks like moving forward. Being, healing your gut and being healthy doesn't mean that you never have a tummy ache a day in your life or that you never ever get bloated again a day in your life. It's, if I eat way too much guacamole because I had 5 avocados ripen all on the same day and I had to make a giant batch of guacamole, I will get bloated. Like I guarantee, but it's also like, well, yeah, you ate 5 avocados worth of guacamole. And yes, that is a real life example that happened to me once. We got a Costco bag of avocados. They were all dead ripe on the same day. I made this big thing of guacamole. My husband ate a little bit. My daughter didn't touch it. I gave a little bit to the neighbors. And then I still was left with like 5 avocados worth of guacamole that I ate single-handedly that night. And then later that evening, I was like, wow, I am really bloated and distended. And I was like, well, yeah, duh. Like you ate 5 avocados worth of guacamole. Of course you are. That makes sense. So anyway, rambling point. But I suppose my point in sharing all that is I'm glad that the success stories were helpful. Let's see. Yeah, Lab said, and I'm love that you told us not to scroll on Reddit. I can't stand Reddit personally. Again, but like I can't stand a lot of the internet and the modern world. Actually, as a really quick side tangent, I really hate AI, just on a multitude of levels. I'm already so sick of seeing like AI generated videos on my social media feed, and my husband, he'll click on that stuff more than I do, but he'll show me a video and he's like, "Oh, isn't this funny?" And I'm like, that's AI generated garbage. Why are and I'm really big on like vote with your clicks. And I'm like, why are you giving that video engagement? Like, why are you clicking on it? He's like, "Oh, it's funny." And I'm like, ish. But you're like rewarding that content creator to make more AI slop. And oh God. Oh, existential crisis. Hating the state of the world. I think I reference the Terminator movies like once a day at this point. I'm just waiting for Skynet to be self-aware. I don't trust it as far as I can throw it. I don't like it. I've joked many times in the last 6 months in particular that I think I just want to move away into a log cabin and be like a medicine woman or like a witch doctor and live in the woods and like frolic with the plants. Plants are real. They're not going to scam you with AI content. If anybody wants to be a witch in the woods with me, let me know. We'll get a gang together. Let's see. Okay, Bike said scam SOS. I mean, yeah, it's fine. Like I think that they've had some good content over the years. Maybe I'm biased because I was in one of those years ago. They've had some good stuff over the years. They've had some stuff that I didn't agree with and didn't resonate. And again, it doesn't make it intrinsically good or bad that, a lot of those people are there to make money. It's just, it is what it is. But you gotta know that that's what you're getting into, right? Similar but different. So in the functional medicine profession, a lot of the events that you go to, like seminars, conferences, a lot, nay, I would even say all of the events, like educational events, are heavily sponsored by supplement companies and lab companies. And sometimes a supplement company will put on an educational seminar. And I don't think that's intrinsically good or bad. I've gone to some good ones over the years, and I've gone to some really shit ones. I think it's like the ratio of good, useful, true knowledge versus how much selling they're doing that's important to me. So as an example, I know I'm a chiropractor, but I personally cannot stand Standard Process. I can't. I can't stand that company. And that's another dissertation for another day. But when I've gone to Standard Process seminars, it's like 90% them selling you on their shit. And here's why you should only buy from SP. And here's why this is superior. And you get like 10% actual broadly applicable useful information. And I've gone to like 2 of them and I hated both of them. Um, versus like I've gone to seminars with like Zymogen and Apex Energetics. I would kind of lump Biotics into this category, but not as much. But like those companies, it's flipped. You get 90% good, useful, broadly applicable information. And then like 10% of the time, they're like, oh, by the way, here's our formula. And I can live with that. But my point in that is that I would always go to those seminars understanding and knowing that they, at the end of the day, they are hoping that I buy their supplements, right? But I would see colleagues go to these seminars and they would get all like twinkly, starry eyed. And they'd be like, oh, I need to go out and buy all of the Repairvite and all of my patients need to be on Tumoro Active. And I'm just like, can you snap out of it, dude? Like you fell for the sales pitch, get a grip on yourself. And it was kind of funny. So anyway, it's when you're being sold to, you just need to understand that you're being sold to. But I would say that that's also the case on virtually every corner of the internet for that matter, right? And like social media, you see a Facebook ad or an Instagram ad for a free webinar or something, like they're going to pitch you on something. And that's not a bad thing. I've done that plenty of times. Like I'm in business to make money and put food on the table, right? Like it is what it is. And I'm certainly not going to spend money on Facebook ads to do a free webinar and then not try to recuperate that investment, right? Just is what it is. So I don't know. I think that SIBO SOS is okay. I think you just have to go into something like that, understanding that you're being sold to. But if you can go in with that sort of framework and you can take everything they say with a grain of salt, I think there's plenty of good information to be had from a resource like that. So that's that point. Yeah, and then Lav said that the avocado story has happened to every loyal Costco member. It's true. And you go, God, who is it? Shang Wang, stand-up comedian. He has a new one on Netflix, I think. Purple. It's hilarious. I feel like I love stand-up comedy as a side note. By the way, here, okay, put in the chat. If any of you are into stand-up comedians, put your favorite comedians down in the chat thing. I'm always looking for new people to watch, and I really love stand-up comedy. But Shang Wang has a bit about avocados and like all of them ripening on the same day. If you search YouTube, I think it'll come up as a short usually. But if you look up Shang, SHENG, Wang, WANG, and then avocados, if you search for that, it'll pop up with a short. And he's a hoot. I feel like he's the closest, like his delivery and his method of doing comedy is like the closest thing I've come to a modern day Mitch Hedberg. I don't think it's completely fair to compare anybody to Mitch Hedberg or vice versa for that matter. But like, there's something about Shang Wang that kind of reminds me of Mitch Hedberg. And I really, really love that because Mitch Hedberg was like my gateway drug into stand-up comedy. And I still to this day listen to him and love him. Rest in peace, Mitch. You people are killing me. Nobody's commenting favorite stand-up comedian. Do none of you watch stand-up comedy? Is it just me? Lame. Come on, somebody give me a name to work with. Let's see. Yeah. Oh, Mike, that's nice. Thank you. Mike Walter says that he likes my channel because I have content on various topics, in GI worlds that he had never heard of before, like the vagus nerve and D-lactic acidosis. Yeah. And everything's connected, right? Like one of the things that I tend to do in my work is like drawing the lines between things that you feel like are irrelevant to each other, but they're actually super duper connected. So like, sleep and circadian rhythm kind of stuff and connecting that back to gut health as an example. Like probiotics and gut health, that's not a big leap to make, right? Like we very quickly understand why that's important for gut health or relevant to gut health. prebiotics and fiber, like that's not a far leap. But I find sometimes that things like sleep and stress management and like hormones and connecting that with the gut, like sometimes that gets lost for people and like they don't see the relevance of those two things. But I assure you, there those three examples I just gave, those are very much connected to gut function. Um, and yeah, and I think one of the things that I'm rediscovering about myself and reminding myself about. Because I'll say it too, like, here's a little bit about me. So I turned 40 later this month. I might try to do a birthday live stream. My birthday's on a Tuesday, I think. It's July 21st. Mark your calendar. But I turned 40. And I know it's kind of like New Year's resolutions. Like everybody, it's like this like cultural symbolic thing, the idea of the new year and like starting the new year off fresh and yada yada. And I know like it doesn't mean anything really. Like there's no real profound difference between December 31st and January 1st. Like I understand it's another day. And it's like a cultural significance that we've placed on the idea of a new year and a resolution. But that significance can also be really motivating and inspiring, and it can inspire change, right? So I think like both things could be true. I think that it could just be another day floating around the solar system, right? If you were to think about it like an astronomer. Um, but it can also be significant and motivating, and like it can help catapult you into change with the right kind of circumstances and the right mindset. And similarly, um, I've been reflecting a lot in the last 6 or so months about turning 40 and what that means. And I have a quote on my computer. Hold on, let me try to find it real quick. Um, okay, so the quote is from Carl Jung. The first half of your life, so before the age of 40, is just practice. The real game starts at 40, but only if you dare to have eyes to see. Ooh. Ooh. And I've been looking at that quote on a sticky note on my computer for probably 4 or 5 months. But, I think there's been a lot of self-exploration, in the last year or so of my life and kinda being in this weird, funky place. Um, and where was I going with this? Hold on. There was something, da, 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 fake star. Oh, Lord knows how I got on this tangent. I thought there was something in a comment that would bring me back to it. But anyway, um, there's been like a lot of self-exploration and thinking about like who I am and who I want to be and what I want to get out of life and like what is my purpose being here and deep shit. And I won't get into all of it. But one of the things that I'm rediscovering about myself is that for a long time I've known one of my skill sets is taking something really complicated and messy and like sciency and distilling it into something that people can understand and kind of like distilling it down to its core and translating it into like real people talk. And it goes as far back as school. I was a tutor for a lot of through grad school. I worked as a tutor and a personal trainer, and all of my tutoring students said that I was like really great at explaining things. And, we would talk about like physiology and endocrinology and anatomy. And I had a way of explaining it and it like clicked for them. And then I was a very effective tutor. And one of my best friends to this day, one of my best friends from grad school, she reminds me of that all the time. Like every, 4 to 6 months, she reminds me that like that is a skill set of mine is like explaining things that would be really obtuse and confusing and messy and like not intuitive and making it just click and making it really intuitive. And so I want to get back to that. I want to get back to taking something that's complex and making it real and making it actionable in the real world, right? It's like you don't need to know the exact wiring of the vagus nerve, right? Like you don't need to know all of what goes into those nuclei and what hole of the skull the vagus nerve comes out of and the whole pathway it takes. Like you don't need to know any of that shit. And you don't even, you don't even need to gargle to stimulate your vagus nerve. You just need to have kind of a conceptual view and an understanding of that balance between rest and digest and fight or flight. And you can start to kind of trace that back and get into real ways to actually tone your vagus nerve. It's, it's like it could be rocket science. You could absolutely make the vagus nerve super complex and like crazy hard to understand, or you could make it really simple and talk about it like it's a real thing. Um, so anyway, so I'm looking forward to getting back on the horse with making proper YouTube videos, like, recorded, produced YouTube videos. And there's some juicy stuff that I have in mind for the series actually. So one, let me test you all and see if you're all awake. So I shared one of the series that I'm going to be working on in the coming months is a dedicated series on gas, bloating, and abdominal distension. Yeah. Do you guys want to know perhaps the juiciest series that I'm hoping to do in the coming months? And by the way, I'm not putting an official timestamp on any of this because it's very much contingent on what all I have going on and my energy reserves. Also, if I try to record something right now in July in North Carolina, I'm probably going to melt into a puddle of sweat. Because like I said, even our air conditioners can like barely keep up with the heat right now. And let me tell you, my office right now is toasty. I have had this ice pack on my lap at least 3 times, now 4, talking to you guys, and it's sweltering. I imagine if I tried to stand at my whiteboard and do YouTube videos and like record something right now, I would have big old pit stains and it would not be pretty. So for what's worth. So I don't know if I'm going to get anything out for the summer. I hope I do. I might try to stick with something where I can sit like I am now. And that way it's less apparent if I'm sweating to death and I can have like a cool pack on my lap. And I might wait to get back to my whiteboard until more like the fall when our air conditioner isn't struggling to keep up with the 100, whatever it is, degree heat. But anyway, do any of you want to know what else? The big juicy one. There's one series where I'm like, ooh, this is going to get the clicks. This is going to get the views. Because here's something stupid. This is yet another layer of my frustration and my existential crisis is I want to make the videos that I want to make. Like I want to make things that I'm interested in, and I want to make things that I think are going to be the most helpful for you people. But there's also this idea of kind of like understanding what people will click on, right? Like I've said this for a long time. Like we all know the concept of clickbait, right? If I made a video right now that was like 10 surprising nutrients in spinach, I would get like 3 clicks for sure. But if I made another video that's like, this toxin in spinach is causing you pain, oh my God, I would get a bajillion clicks on that shit. And it's so there's like this weird dance, this weird interplay for any YouTuber, any content creator is like finding that line of like making it enjoyable for me to produce so that I don't totally burn out on my career. Something that's beneficial for you and also something that you will click on, right? There's like these 3 it's complicated. Anyway, so a couple of people did bite when I asked and they said spill the tea. The one that I think will get all of the clicks at least is a biofilm series. Ooh. Ooh. Can somebody put ooh in the chat? Throw me a bone. Come on. Come on. Somebody put ooh. You're killing me, people. You're killing me. You're killing me, Smalls. Okay, well, I will. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Anyway, but let me tell you the challenge with the biofilm thing. Hold on. Open. It's just a matter of where I keep it. No, hold on. Research. Okay. So the way I do research, I don't know if anybody else is interested in this little behind the scenes moment. The way I do research for big projects like this, because there are some topics that I could just talk about off the cuff. And there are some topics where I'm like, ooh, I need to read about that if I'm going to do it justice and I'm going to be like accurate and true. Um, and biofilms is definitely one of those topics where to really do it justice and have it be like accurate and true and useful, I really think I need to do a deep dive on the research. And so I started that process a while ago actually. And I keep getting I keep getting stopped because it's this enormous task. Um, but what I'll tell you is that most biofilm research is not what you think it is. We actually have very little research on GI biofilms outside of a few particular pathogens that make biofilms. But like this idea that to treat the SIBO, you need a biofilm disruptor might be a bunch of malarkey. But here's the funny thing. Most of the biofilm research that we do have is done on implants and medical devices or animals and what's the word? It's not called a crop, right? Like a crop would be like corn. Like livestock, kind of, I don't know. I don't know the word I'm searching for. But anyway, so this is the search term thread that I put into PubMed to try to get anything even remotely useful for this project. Okay. Here we go. And if any of you know how to do like searches on PubMed and search terms, you could tell it like, oh, I want it to include this, but not this. And I want this term to be in the title, and I want this author. And like you can specify a lot of things. So here's the big string that I had put in PubMed. Biofilm, title, and gastrointestinal, not piglet, not surgical, not mesh, not catheter, not insert, not tube, not dental, not vulvovaginal, not oral, not cancer, not tumor, not tumorogenic, not implant, not water, not murine, not aquatic, not food industry, not spoilage, not periodontal, not endoscopy, not feeding, not birds, not dairy, not meat, not poultry, not fish, not swine, not shrimp, not chicken. And it was like each layer that I continued down, like I would put in the beginning of it, right? And then it would be like all these fucking chicken, like poultry articles. Be like, oh. So I'd go back to the search term and write not poultry research. Okay. And then I'm scrolling. Oh, it's a bunch of articles about shrimp. Damn it. Okay. Not shrimp. And so it kept kind of organically growing into this big thing. And I don't even know if that's like my final landing place for the search terms I'm going to end up using. I got like a decent starting point for some GI based research. I was like, God damn it. There's so much. There's so much I have to include and exclude to get anything remotely useful in here. So anyway, that's kind of, I've wanted to do a biofilm series for at least 4 years minimum. But it's a huge undertaking. So we'll get there when we get there, but that is in the works. I am going to be doing a biofilm series at some point here. Okay, back to the comments because I rambled on. Oh my God. Mike said rap god. Yes. Yes. Maybe I just watch too much K-pop for my own good, and maybe the rappers and the K-pop is rubbing off on me finally. Let's see. Mina DYG asked if I would recommend prokinetics for bile acid malabsorption. Ooh, I don't know. That is another topic that I've had on the docket. So I have this great big Google sheet with all the ideas that I've had over the years for different videos and series for this channel. Bile acid malabsorption is one of the topics. What's funny about it, and this, I admit, this might be selfish as an American. We don't have really good testing for that in the US right now. This is what everybody usually talks about, like, oh, I can't get like shotgun sequencing stool tests in Europe, like, and they have to order it from the States or something. This is one where we are lagging behind, and this is like pretty widely used in Europe, is my understanding, but we just don't have anything available at the moment. So I haven't super prioritized it just because it's not talked about in the US nearly as much simply because we don't have any like good available testing for it right now, which again is ludicrous because bile acid malabsorption is super common. I think it's like one third of like IBSD cases, like diarrhea cases, can be attributed to bile acid malabsorption, which is pretty significant. So yeah, that's on the docket. I don't know. See, and this is the other thing. Because I live and work in the United States, and the vast majority of the people I work with are in the United States, um, I haven't worked with that many people who have confirmed, diagnosed, bona fide bile acid malabsorption. I've had conversations with people over the years where we've hypothesized it and we've thought through what we might do based on the hypothesis, but I haven't really worked with many people where it's like, oh, yeah, this is confirmed, diagnosed, here's the test. Now, what do we do? Um, what I would say is that I don't know if I would recommend a prokinetic. I think that you could try. The nice thing about prokinetics is that they're either going to work or they're not going to work. There are very few instances of people feeling worse on a prokinetic, with maybe the exception of some people just really don't agree with 5-HTP as an ingredient. But if you kind of shy away from the 5-HTP based products, I really see no harm, no foul in trying a prokinetic. So I don't think it would hurt. I don't know if it would help. I don't know. I know that the conventional treatment for, let's just call it BAM, right? Bile acid malabsorption. The conventional treatment for BAM is like sequestrants. Um, oh, shoot. Cholestyramine is the prescription that's usually used for that. So I feel like mentally, I would go more to like, herbal and natural binders like charcoal and clay and that sort of stuff, a little bit more so. As far as one of the things I'd like to uncover in that series when I get around to it is like the root cause of bile acid malabsorption, right? Because I think that treating the symptoms or like band-aiding the symptom is one piece of it. But then it's like, well, why did that happen? That's the other half of it. And I haven't done enough of a deep dive in the research yet to speak to that. Like, I'm not sure if I fully understand why somebody would develop BAM, but as far as the treatment, I feel like I would go more the direction of binders, at least as a symptomatic band-aid in the meantime, while you continue plugging away at some of those unsexy basics, right? And just try to like get your body healthier in its totality. Um, yeah, that's an interesting question though. Yeah. Beak asked if I have experience with gastroparesis and the microbiome. Um, so I have some limited experience with folks with gastroparesis. Um, it's like poor motility on steroids from like a stomach perspective. It's delayed stomach emptying that is so bad that they gave it a label, right? So as a rule of thumb, I would think prokinetic motility regulating kind of stuff generally would be my first, vagus nerve, gut brain axis kind of stuff as well would be my first kind of line. I don't know about the because you said and the microbiome, right? So are you thinking more like how gastroparesis affects the microbiome in the stomach or the small bowel or further downstream? Or are you thinking how the microbiome affects gastroparesis? Because I would say like gastroparesis could affect the microbiome in sort of like the dysmotility SIBO-ish kind of framework, right? Like if you slow gastric emptying enough, that could lead to more of like a festering SIBO kind of situation. Kind of like if you take PPIs for a prolonged period of time, how that could kind of set the stage for SIBO. So I would think gastroparesis would be sort of in line with that as far as gastroparesis affecting the microbiome. Um, I don't know if the microbiome If I don't understand how the microbiome would affect gastroparesis. I feel like I have a concept for like the arrow going one direction, but not necessarily the other way. But that's interesting. Yeah. Uh, Opinion on glycine supplements. Oh, and thank you for the ooh. Thank you. Yeah, I like glycine. I think so I guess my follow-up would be for what purpose, right? I will say most Americans most people in quote unquote developed countries get way, way more of an amino acid called methionine in the diet. So it's basically from when we eat meat, typically we eat meat that used to be a skeletal muscle. So, like a bicep or a tricep or a pec or a back muscle or a glute, right? Um, if you get like a pork butt or a steak or a chicken breast, like that used to be a skeletal muscle for that animal. Um, and so skeletal muscle has a lot of methionine in it, but it has very little glycine. The flip side is that connective tissue and organ meats and bones have a lot of glycine, but very little methionine in it. And there is some talk about that balance between these two amino acids being relevant for things like cancer, for example. So yeah, I like the idea of getting more glycine. I think that you could do that in many different forms. You could do, bone broth. You could try to eat organ meat more. I really like collagen peptides. I mix that in stuff periodically, and I think it doesn't have a super profound taste in my opinion, so I can blend that in a lot of stuff. So I tend to favor the collagen peptide products personally. You could get glycine as a standalone supplement. You can get it as a powder, and it's genuinely pretty nice. It comes in like kind of like a granulated, almost like sugar form, and you can just eat it kind of by the spoonful, and it tastes kind of sweet and nice. And it's pretty cheap when you get it that way. And then you can also get mineral supplements where glycine is bound to the mineral. So, like magnesium glycinate is a common example. You're not going to get as much glycine that way necessarily. Like, if you want maximal glycine dosing, you should get the powder and just eat it by the spoon. If you want more of food based, you could go the collagen peptide, bone broth, organ meat kind of direction. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it is good for you. It's one of the building blocks of glutathione. It's good for the liver and like bile flow. It's good for gut healing, although glutamine seems to be more important for that purpose. Um, it can help with anxiety and sleep, at least somewhat. Um, what else? What else? I feel like those are probably the claims to fame. I feel like, yeah, sleep and anxiety, that's probably where I've used it like kind of prescriptively the most, as something that can help with sleep and kind of quieting the mind chatter. But I think from a nutritional perspective, I think it makes sense for all of us to try to get more because damn near all of us don't get enough glycine. Yeah. And I know Chris Masterjohn has spoken on that topic. So if you type in his name with the word glycine, you might find more information. Chris Masterjohn, I think, is brilliant. He's got a PhD in nutrition. What I will say about him is I think he's a little bit over the top. And he's stated publicly before that he has OCD. And Amy, my podcast co-host, Amy Hollenkamp, and I have both hypothesized for a long time that his OCD comes through in his writing and his protocols pretty big time. I think that most of his protocols are excessive and not anything that normal people would ever want to do. He tends to be the person who's like, building these big, massive protocols that are like 12 or 15 supplements and like really particular food things, and telling people that they have to eat liver every day. And it's kind of intense. So take what he says with a little grain of salt. I think that for a more anxious, kind of OCD riddled nervous system, I think Chris Masterjohn can be a little triggery, but I think he's brilliant. But he has some videos about glycine. And I know he has even given numbers. I think he said, no, I'm going to botch it. He's given a ratio for like every X amount of grams of protein you eat per day, you should do X amount of collagen peptides to like offset that. There's some ratio of that. I remember thinking it was going to be kind of a lot for most people, especially now because protein is the princess right now. By the way, if you guys will humor me for a moment. Oh, hold on. And the glycine. Yeah, so for leaky gut and intestinal ulceration for the glycine thing. Yeah, I don't I think that L-glutamine has a lot more evidence behind it for that purpose, but I think that glycine can help. I the th- part of the difficulty in answering these questions sometimes is that I can't think of a case where I had somebody who I believed had leaky gut, and then the only thing we did was glycine, right? So it's hard for me to say how that single ingredient would really affect something like leaky gut because even if I did glycine for that purpose, I would typically layer it with like L-glutamine and probiotics and other stuff. But I think that it's a reasonable part of a leaky gut protocol. And again, most people are deficient. It's not a true deficiency like defined by like the USDA, like that style of deficiency. Um, but yeah, I think a lot of us are eating insufficient glycine in the diet, so it wouldn't hurt to add it as a supplement. And it's nice that it's relatively inexpensive and decent tasting for that matter, which I appreciate. Um, I realized this about myself years ago. So when I had a brick and mortar office, I had quite the supplement and herb apothecary, and it evolved over the years. Some of you have seen videos where I'm standing in the doorway to that supplement um, the supplement closet. And I'm talking about like antimicrobials for Candida and SIBO. Those are still some of my better performing videos, actually. Um, but I noticed for a lot of years, on the rare occasion that I would buy an expensive supplement and stock an expensive supplement, I started realizing that all of the expensive stuff would expire and I would have to toss it out or take it myself. And I started realizing it was because I could not, in good conscience, sell somebody a bottle of turmeric that cost $90. Like I couldn't do it. Even though I was limiting the markup that I was taking for those products, like I had to mark up a little bit to factor in like inventory management and shrink. But even though I was limiting the amount of profit I was making on these supplements, I just realized I can't buy the super expensive stuff because I'm not going to sell it. Like I might be interested in it or enchanted by it enough from hearing about it at a seminar that I purchase it one time, but then it's just going to sit on the shelf and rot. And then I have to take that as a loss for my business. So anyway, um, I the point of that is to say, I tend to favor and I tend to really appreciate things that are more economical, I guess. Um, okay, let me see. Let me see. Hopping around. I wanted to talk just a moment though. Oh, and actually, Mike, you actually set me up for this perfectly. Um, the best clickbait in 2026 is fiber maxing. Um, scambiotics in the title. I'm not sure what you mean by scambiotics. If you want to elaborate, but anyway, what I'll say, whether y'all realize it or not, I will say I'm going to sound older than I actually am because, like I said, I turned 40 later this month, so getting there, but I'm not old yet. I refuse to believe that. But we humans are cyclical creatures. Our interests and our focus tends to be cyclical and like just like fashion, right? Like fashion is very cyclical. My mom wore bell bottoms when she, was growing up in, the 60s and 70s. And then I wore bell bottoms with like these big gaudy flowers on them. I wore bell bottoms when I was in like, middle school, high school, on either side of the millennium, basically. I was in high school from 2000 to 2004. So middle school, high school would have been like either side of the millennium for me. Um, and then skinny jeans were a thing, and then leggings were a thing. And now like big baggy Jinko jeans are coming in style. And I'm like, oh my God, it's 1996 again. And it's just like fashion is cyclical, right? Nutrition is very cyclical too, and we go through trends, and even honestly herbs, like herbs and natural remedies can be somewhat cyclical too. And to that point I'll share, so hold on, I have a stack of herb books right now. So I've been revisiting the Book of Herbal Wisdom by Matthew Wood, and it's a fun read because it's a little bit less hardcore clinical and it's a little bit more narrative about these plants. But he made a point of sharing that echinacea was like the first snake oil. It was the first thing, or it was like an early snake oil. I don't know if it was the first, but it was it was peddled as a cure-all for everything. You have a mole, echinacea. You've got cancer, echinacea. You've got fungal toenails, echinacea. You've got IBS, echinacea. And so echinacea was insanely popular in like the 1800s, I think. And then it way fell out of favor, pretty much into obscurity in sometime in the 1900s, I think mid 1900s, maybe. It fell into obscurity and like hardly anybody used echinacea, hardly anybody talked about echinacea. Echinacea was not a household word. And then it started to gain popularity again in, I forget what he said now, maybe in the 90s, like the 1990s, I want to say. And now almost everybody here probably has at least heard of the herb echinacea. And you have kind of a little bit of an image of what that herb might do for us. But similarly, nutrition is very cyclical and fatty in nature, not fatty, Fatty, fad-y, Faddy. I don't know. Word I just made up. So moving way back. So in the 1920s, protein was demonized and carbs were the blessed nutrient, the blessed child. And that's why John Harvey Kellogg invented breakfast cereal and made Kellogg cereal, because he specifically said that he wanted people to have a protein-free, healthy breakfast option. And so he made this thing that was just pure carbs and sugar. And that's how we got breakfast cereal. It's because at the time, he in particular really demonized protein and thought that protein was like the root of all dietary evil. Then I think things kind of normalized somewhat. I'm less familiar with what nutrition culture was doing in like the mid 1900s. So 1920s, we demonized protein. And then everybody knows in the 1980s and 1990s, we demonized fat. And everybody and their nephew was going vegan or vegetarian or on a low fat diet. And what happened? We got fatter than ever. Like that wasn't the answer either. Then I would say, actually, I could put a date on it. Whenever Gary Taubes wrote Good Calories, Bad Calories, I think that book came out in 2008. That was, in my opinion, the beginning of the fat revolution and us kind of wrapping our heads around, oh, maybe fat isn't so bad. And then, it's starting to ramp up bit by bit by bit. You start getting more and more talk about gluten and non-celiac gluten sensitivity, and that's making people go gluten-free and be scared of wheat. So you have all of these things kind of accumulating together. And then we had the rise of the paleo diet and like the primal, ancestral, et cetera kind of diets. And that kind of peaked in like 2013, 2014, maybe into 2015, right? And those, the whole half the selling point of those diets was you can eat fat again. You can eat bacon on everything. And everyone's like, sweet. And by its nature, paleo was somewhat lower in carbohydrates. Then we take that to the next level and we get the rise of keto, and we get that from like, I would even say like 2015-ish, maybe through pretty recently, like maybe through 2025, everybody and their damn brother was doing keto. And it was all you ever heard of. And you start seeing the grocery stores selling keto products, and there's keto on the cover of Oprah's magazine and the grocery store line. And it's, now fat is the blessed nutrient that you cannot get enough of. And carbs are demonized. And protein has been relatively neutral. Then I don't know if it's because of the rise in interest in perimenopause or if it's just the tide's changing and there's nothing else to it, or if it's because of the rise in popularity of the carnivore diet. We are officially entering an era where protein is the blessed nutrient. And now we're like a little bit more neutral on fat and carbs. I think we still, as a whole, we're still demonizing carbs way too much. But we're in this phase of human existence where everything is freaking protein. There's protein popcorn, protein ice cream, protein pancakes, protein this, protein that. And it's, and you go on social media and you see, some 25-year-old stick thin chick. And she's like, here's how I eat 300 grams of protein a day. And it's like, Jesus Christ, That is way too much protein, I assure you. And it's the cyclical nature of humans and how we operate and how nutrition works. Give it another 10 years and we'll be demonizing protein because we'll find that everybody got colon cancer or something, right? Or like everybody will be dying of kidney failure and we'll say, oh my God, that was too much protein. And then pendulum will swing violently the other way and we'll glorify carbs again. And anyway. So I forget the whole point of that ramble, but I wanted to make mention of that because I don't think that gets talked about quite enough. And it's important when you're trying to understand nutritional information, right? It's like there are always going to be trends and fads, and there have been since at least the 1920s. And we can't even specifically blame social media or the internet for it, although I think that contributes. And I think capitalism in general contributes to that a lot because then you can sell protein products and protein powders and you could get the clicks and whatnot. So while I think the internet and social media and capitalism play a big role in that, it all predates that. I mean, again, John Harvey Kellogg demonized protein over 100 years ago. So we certainly didn't have Instagram back then. But anyway, rambling aside. So I think that fiber maxing, that was the start of this. I think that fiber maxing probably came about because it's like two sides in a war. It's like you have the people who are promoting 200, 300 grams of protein a day, and it's just protein, protein, protein. And then you have this other side of the war where people are screaming from the rooftops like, Jesus Christ, please eat some fiber. And I'm more of a proponent of like, could we have a balanced diet and make sure we get both? Right? Like, is that such a bad idea? I personally don't think anybody needs 300 grams of protein per day. But I also I don't know if fiber is the only blessed nutrient either. Like if you go vegan and you eat crap tons of fiber and you don't get enough protein, I think that's going to be bad for your health too. But yeah, if you're eating nothing but like steak and eggs and canned tuna fish and protein shakes, and you're not getting a speck of fiber, I do think you're setting yourself up for disaster later on. And it's just balance, balance and moderation, people. Rational, balanced living and nutritional advice. That's what I try to bring to the world. But anyway, fiber maxing. I think it's just people trying to, it's like the pendulum right now societally is here. And I think that fiber maxing was born because people are desperately trying to grab the pendulum and forcibly bring it this way. And of course, when you get that kind of dynamic, both of the extremes end up being incorrect usually. And the truth that will help the most people probably lies in the middle. But moderation and truth and balance and rational, calm discussions don't get the clicks and they don't get the likes and they don't get the ad revenue. And that's just how it works. Balance maxing. Yes. If I was on social media more, I would totally make that into a hashtag. Balance maxing. I love it. Okay. Catching back up with comments. And then it has almost been 2 hours, guys. Holy macaroni. Let's see. I might need to wrap up at some point. Actually, I need to hydrate. Girl. So another thing I've learned about myself in the last 5 or so years, for those of you who don't know, I'm a larger human being. I am 6 feet tall, and on a good day, I weigh about 190 pounds. So I am a tall glass of water as a human, and I'm cool with that. I'm cool. But if I don't drink what I kind of feel like is an absurd amount of water, my body lets me know, usually with a pounding tension headache. And it only in more recent times I kind of like went through and calculated it properly, and I'm like, oh, okay, I feel like this is a lot of water. I have to drink bare minimum 3 of these giant water bottles a day. So about 96 ounces is kind of my bare minimum to not get a pounding headache and get in trouble from it. But then it occurred to me, I'm like, oh, but Nick, you're also kind of a giant. So, you can't just base it off of, what is the height of the average woman in the United States, like 5'4", 5'5", something like that, I think. Like, I'm far larger than the standard American woman. And so anyway, so I need to remember to hydrate because if I don't, my body will yell at me. And I'm just enough of a dummy that it does happen every so often. And it's usually stuff like this where I'm talking and I'm getting into a conversation and I forget to hydrate. So hold on. I'm trying to lean away so that you don't have to hear me drink this. I think that would be annoying if I was close to the microphone. Okay, let me see. Oh, and then the bile acid malabsorption question. Yeah, they said that they did not get a test. It's, yeah, hypothesized. Yeah. You're welcome for answering. Oh, I'm not going to try to pronounce Parabolian Sand. I give up. You're welcome, Para. Some of you guys have the funnest screen names to try to pronounce. Mike Walter, you're straight to the point, man. I'm pretty sure I could guess your first and last name based on that. That's pretty straightforward for me. But some of you got creative. And then Mina, you had said, yeah, that you wanted to get off cholestyramine. Yeah. I haven't wrapped myself around. I haven't wrapped my head around the mechanism and the why of why bile acid malabsorption happens. I will put it on the docket because that is something for, if nothing else, for my own benefit. I want to learn more about it because I know for sure I've worked with people with BAM. Whether I was aware of it or not is another thing, right? But if about 1/3 of people with IBS-D have BAM, then there's a pretty solid likelihood I've worked with quite a few people with BAM. And if I can get better at understanding it and identifying it and treating it, I think that would help a lot of people. So yeah, so I'll put that on the docket for video topics. Let me actually add it to the thing. Hold on. I can't guarantee when that will be because there's several big series that I have in the works. So for example, now I don't know if I'm going to go in order or when these are all going to get produced, but like the bloating and distension series, for example, I've already mapped out potentially 16 videos from that. So if I do one video a week like I used to, then that's 4 months worth of content right there just from the one series. So I don't know when I could promise a BAM series, but it is something that I've wanted to learn about, even if for no other reason, for selfish reasons, just so that I have the benefit of understanding it better. So I will put that on the list. I just don't know where it's going to end up. But that's been on my radar. Interesting. Cruisescape said, I get headaches when I don't eat enough fiber, and then they go away mostly when I consume more fiber. Huh. What gives? I don't know. The only mechanism I could wrap my head around for that is maybe the fiber is feeding a type of bacteria, and that bacteria is producing a favorable metabolite for you, or in feeding the good bacteria, maybe that fiber is inhibiting a bad bacteria or a bad yeast or a bad thing, and it's inhibiting some inflammatory unfavorable metabolite, right? Like hydrogen sulfide or something like that. But I don't know. That's really curious. I guess at the end of the day, I'm just glad that you identified that pattern because I don't know if I would have put that together. I think the hydration thing, I think that idea was out there somewhere. And so I kind of started putting 2 and 2 together maybe like 5 years ago, and I figured that out. And it's a pretty cheap and easy cure for that matter, is to just, if I get one of those pounding headaches, I just chug one of these water bottles, and usually that does the trick. And then I'm like, you dummy. And the headache is better in like 10 or 15 minutes. I commend you for figuring out the fiber headache link. I don't know if I've heard of that before, and I don't know if I can wrap my head around a mechanism, but I am fascinated by it. Cooley Julio, again, some of you got really creative with your names, asked if I recommend taking betaine HCl before meals. And is it normal that sometimes it can burn when you're taking it? So I recommend if you're going to take betaine HCl, I recommend staying below the threshold that causes burning. Um, you don't want to muck with that and like cause irritation or heaven forbid gastritis or something. So if you can kind of identify, oh, I'm fine if I take 3 capsules, but if I go to 4, I get burning. I probably would stick at 2 or 3 as the dosing, and I wouldn't muck with 4 personally. That is a topic I have a lot of videos on my channel dedicated to. So if you just go, it might even have a playlist. If you go to like low stomach acid, that should pop up. But yeah, I walk you through how to do the challenge, um, how to determine your dosing, how high to go. I like betaine HCl. I think that the only thing is I would say is that try it. If you find that it helps with your symptoms, then yes, I would say continue taking it for, a few months and and keep working on whatever you think your root causes are in the meantime. But it can be a really useful symptomatic band-aid and it can help you digest better in the meantime. I don't think that betaine HCl is necessarily going to like cure what's going on. I think that you've got to trace it back a few steps further and ask why would you have low stomach acid in the first place? Um, but yeah, if it helps with your symptoms, I would say totally go for it. Just stay below the threshold that causes burning. If it's not helping with symptoms, right? Like if you've done the challenge, how I talk about it in my YouTube video, and you've played with like finding a ceiling and all of that, and it doesn't make any noticeable impact on your symptoms, then I would say bag it. It's just not for you. But yeah, but it helps a lot of people certainly. So yeah, I'm a fan. Um, uh, Mr. Rachel says it's so good to see you and hear from you. Thanks, and how you're modeling taking care of yourself. Ah, thanks. Trying, it's hard. It's I'm only human, and I'd like to think I bring that forward into my work, certainly. And, like, I've told this to students and patients for a lot of years too. Like, I don't expect any of you to do anything perfectly. I think that if you go to the extreme and you try to do something 100% perfectly, you're you're gonna give yourself a lot of stress and anxiety and probably some OCD kind of stuff, and it's not worth it. Like, I don't expect your diet to be 100% perfect, 100% organic, but, like, be a damn grown up, right? Like, try to eat vegetables, try to eat diversity, get enough fiber, get enough protein, get your healthy fats, get your folate, just like try to eat healthy most of the time. And then, 20% of the time you eat the chocolate chips that you have stashed on your desk. I hide these in my office so that my husband and child don't steal them all. Like have a pinch of, your dark chocolate chips or whatever it might be. Um, and that's fine. But yeah, I think we're just humans trying to figure out this weird existence on Earth. And yeah, trying to model good behavior as best I can. Um, and I think also too, like starting before you think you're ready and starting even when it's going to be messy and imperfect is really big. I think a lot of people, I found a lot of people are unwilling to introduce foods, for example, until their gut feels totally better. And that's not how it works. That's not reasonable. That's not the journey, right? It's you need to find the bravery within you to experiment at least a little bit with foods before you think you're ready. Um, and that will be the healing work. And that, like challenging yourself and growing, going beyond your comfort zone, like that's part of the work too. And so, like, I'll confess, I wouldn't say that I'm like totally through all my burnouty stuff, and I'm not, totally, chomping at the bit. But I think I've wallowed and muddled and psychoanalyzed and rested enough that I need to get back in the saddle and just start making some videos and get back out there and show you guys that I'm still here and I'm still alive. So that's what I'm doing. So you're observing me in the messy middle, believe it or not. Yep. Let's see. Yeah, Mike shared when overgrowth in the small intestine, these bacteria deconjugate bile acids prematurely, contributing to malabsorption, according to AI. Normally, the primary bile salts are converted to secondary bile salts in the large intestine, but when this process happens in the small intestine, it causes BAM. AI is a game changer. Yeah, I use AI for a couple of things, certainly, but I still lean more towards I think Skynet is going to come for us all someday. Um, yeah, now again, I'm just curious. Like, I think that mechanism can make sense. I th- like I can wrap my head around that. I'm just really curious, like, if it's basing that off of research, like how is the research conducted? And again, like, are we basing the SIBO diagnosis off of a lactulose breath test? In which case, I would not trust it at all because lactulose breath testing has like an 88% false positive rate. Is it a glucose breath test? In which case it's a crapshoot because that it's a 50% false positive rate. So it's a roll of the dice whether a positive diagnosis is correct or not. Is it done with aspirate testing? And if so, what cutoff did they use? Right. So I'm still kind of like curious when I hear that things are correlated with SIBO or that SIBO could be causative or related to something. I'm still really curious how the SIBO was deduced. Um, and I think that we're attributing some things to SIBO that might not be SIBO. But I think that what you typed makes sense. And it's funny you say that. One of the other series is that I'm toying with. It's not as high on the list. Um, Personally, like I've got a couple of different series that I'm flirting with right now. But one of the other series that I'm strongly thinking about doing, or I will eventually, is a bacterial metabolite series. So we would go over, pardon me, we would go over the fan favorites of short chain fatty acids, butyrate, acetate, propionate, that kind of stuff. Um, we could do some tryptophan metabolites like indole. Big in research, but I hardly hear anybody in the SIBO and IBS community talk about it. So I'm kind of curious to do a deep dive on indole and secondary bile acids. That was actually one of the ones on that list. So it's funny that you brought that up because that also is on the docket. I think I think that I've got some other stuff that I'm going to prioritize before the bacterial metabolite series. Also, I don't know how many people are going to watch those videos. Again, me, the nerd, I want to do the bacterial metabolite series because I think it would be fascinating and I think it would be cool. And I think that it might be actionable and relevant to some of you. Um, but like, if you don't know what indole is, if you don't know that like tryptophan metabolism in the gut is a thing, you're not going to give a shit enough to click on the video, right? So that's one of those like everybody in the SIBO, IBS, dysbiosis world knows biofilm. And so I think that the biofilm videos are going to perform way better. The bacterial metabolite one would be like a passion project. That would be like make me happy kind of a thing, but it probably wouldn't get as many clicks. So I'm like, how do I prioritize? And then, and then I've got to make like a clickbaity thumbnail and, try to get people interested in the video. But the way I rationalize this is even on the rare occasion that I do a clickbaity thumbnail or a slightly clickbaity title, my rationale, and this is my like ethical kind of thing, is I'm okay doing that to a degree as long as the video that you click on is really, really good. Right? If I have to trick you into clicking on it and watching it a little bit sooner instead of just adding it to your watch later list on YouTube, right? If I have to kind of like trick you a little bit to get you to watch the video now with a clickbaity thumbnail, but then it's a really damn good video and it helps you a lot, I'm like ethically, morally okay with doing that a little bit. But anyway, yeah, shy of like a really, really clickbaity thumbnail and title, I don't know if I'm going to get people excited about the bacterial metabolites as much. I don't know. But I can see Mike Walter is going to watch. So when it happens, I expect a comment from you, my friend. All right. Let me skim. Let's start wrapping up because, like I said, we've been here for 2 hours. And at some point, I'm going to finish this here water bottle and need to go fill up for number 3. Now you all know my hydration status for the day. I've got to stay on top of that. Um, let's see what other things. So to wrap up, I'm going to ask you, you dedicated few, what topics would you like to hear about on my channel? I'm not going to guarantee that I'm going to do it, but I might if it strikes my fancy. Okay, yeah. See, okay, Mike Walter, you are mega nerd then. I insta click. Yep. Yeah, TMA is on the list. Do I have, hold on. I started making a list of things. Let me just add, hold on, because you brought another one, P Crystal. I don't know why that one hadn't made the list. P. Again, like that's another one that, like when you get into microbiome research, you see these things pop up. It's just you don't really hear about it in like the pop culture SIBO, IBS, dysbiosis kind of space very much. And maybe it's because we don't have a commercial stool test that can test all these things for us. The minute the GI map adds P crustal, then everybody's going to be talking about that, right? But yeah, maybe that's why. But all right, dedicated few here to the very end. What other than the bacterial metabolite series that Mike is very excited about, what other things would strike your fancy if I made them on this channel? Again, I'm not going to guarantee that I'm going to do them, but I'm kind of curious if I can gather some inspiration from all of you. Let's see. Oh, I have a lot of good ones. I'm not going to lie, but I'm waiting to hear from you. Ooh. Shoot, there's too many. Yeah, you have to help me decide. Come on, people. Engage, damn it. Engage. All right. It's going to be crickets. If that's how you're going to be. Wah, wah. Nobody has any ideas. There's nothing that you're just itching to hear me talk about. Getting away from walking on the high wire with diet, etc. Okay. Yeah. I like the laughy with the sweat bubble emoji from Mike. Okay, I like that. Julio. You got a point for the coolest name here, by the way. Would like to hear about how you recommend treating GERD symptoms, treating SIBO, and what diets you recommend doing for IBS symptoms. Okay. I feel like some of that I've touched on to a degree. Treating SIBO, I've talked about SIBO ad nauseum on this channel for sure. So that might just be a matter of going back and going through my videos. I would particularly direct you to the SIBO mistakes series that I posted last February. That for sure. For GERD, I don't fancy myself an upper GI specialist by any stretch. What I would say is that if somebody comes to me and their primary chief complaint is more lower GI, like IBS, SIBO, bloating, pooping kind of predominant symptoms, and they also have mild GERD or mild gastritis, then I would typically work with those folks. And I've had some good success with mild GERD. If somebody comes to me and they're like, my absolute top priority, my worst symptom, the thing that rules my life is GERD, I'm not going to waste their money. I don't think I'm that good with severe GERD that I'm taking those clients on. But when that comes up, because like sometimes it'll come up in discovery calls and emails and whatnot. When that does happen, I happily refer people to Molly Pelletier. She's on Instagram, she's on YouTube, she's everywhere, I think. Just really lovely human being. She's a registered dietitian. She has an app that actually really helped my neighbor. A neighbor buddy of mine had a really, really severe flare of gastritis probably about a year and a half ago. She was dropping weight like crazy. She whittled her diet down to nothing, really, like she couldn't sleep. It was so bad. And I recommended Molly Pelletier's Flora app to her. And between that and some of the nutrition and herbal advice that I gave her, she was able to pull back out of that really bad gastritis flare. So I really like Molly Pelletier. I think she's great with upper GI. Anything like GERD, gastritis, ulcer ish, I would send more so to her. And then anything like intestine and colon and like further down, it's the pyloric sphincter. Anything north of the pyloric sphincter is Molly's territory. Anything south of the pyloric sphincter is more my territory. That's what I would say. But I actually did a guest video with her we did a swap where I interviewed her on my channel and she interviewed me on her channel. So if you go on my channel and you look, I don't remember when it was, but I think it was a few years ago. But if you look back, if you search my channel for Molly, Molly, she should pop up and that'll give you the spelling of her last name and it will link to her channel. Yeah, so that's my thought for GERD. But maybe I'll do some videos on GERD. We'll see. It's probably not going to be as high on my priority list though. And then definitely, dietary strategies for managing IBS symptoms. Definitely the one that has the most research on it is low FODMAP. I mentioned way earlier, like 2 hours ago in the live stream, low FODMAP has pretty good evidence helping people with diarrhea-based symptoms and mixed, like oscillating between diarrhea and constipation type symptoms. It has really limited evidence helping with constipation-based symptoms, and it has some evidence, like a medium amount of evidence, helping with IBD. But really where low FODMAP shines is IBS-D and IBS-M. So as far as like diets that have the most evidence for it, low FODMAP would win out for that. I do recommend working with somebody at least a little bit just to make sure that you do the protocol right, because it's not meant to be a long-term diet. You're only meant to do the elimination phase for 4 to 6 weeks. And then you have to start reintroducing things and trialing things and finding where your tolerance is. And you also want to watch out for nutritional deficiencies because it's really easy to get some nutritional deficiencies when you do the stricter versions of low FODMAP. But if you go on the Monash University website, you should be able to use their locator and find a registered dietitian who's been trained in that diet. I've done the Monash training. It's just I can't be listed on their website because I'm not a registered dietitian. So I've done the training myself. It's just they won't list me because it's an RD database, which is fine. But yeah, intolerance to probiotics. Yeah, that's good. I mean, I think one of my top performing videos of all time, it actually might be my number one video of all time, is a video titled Probiotic Side Effects. And I talk about like why I think people react poorly to probiotics at times. I could probably do an updated version of that because I have maybe a little bit more theory, but I still think what I said in that video is largely true. So if you just go to my channel and organize the videos by most popular, it's going to be one of the first few hits. But I think last I knew, I think it's my top performing video of all time, actually. I could let me add that though. Hold on. Tolerance to probiotics. Yeah, I feel like I've done that one, but like I said, that's also an older video of mine. Minimum 5 years old, maybe older, I don't know. So I could maybe do an updated version of that and go into a little bit more detail. Lab says metabolites. Yeah, okay, all right. At least I'll get 2 views, 2 clicks on the metabolite videos when and if they come out, right? Yeah, I mean, I have so much that I want to do. It's just, hours in the day, man. I'll confess something, and hopefully this is not in poor taste. But realistically, like I was telling you guys earlier, right? Like you need to understand, like everybody on the internet is keen to sell you something. And that's not good or bad. It is what it is. You just need to be aware of it. And I'm no exception. Like I'm not on YouTube purely out of the goodness of my heart. Like I have a business and part of me hopes that you want to work with me someday. And I'm in business to make money at the end of the day. But it's funny because I feel like for a really, really long time, like from when I was in school, my dream is like, oh, if people could just pay me to read and learn and then like teach whatever it is that I just learned about, that's like the dream. And I feel like YouTube is almost there. I don't make a crazy amount on ad revenue on my channel, honestly. Like it's like $100 here or there a month. Um, but I'm like, oh, do I do the cliche thing and I like start a Patreon and try to get more revenue for like the YouTube educational gig doing that? But then I have to think of like perks for the Patreon and I don't know. I don't know if I want to do that whole route. I'm flirting right now with the idea of doing a Substack. I started a Substack. I'm actively debating of like how into that idea I might be. And like, oh, if I kind of put information that I'm learning and like write stuff on Substack, maybe that's like the way to achieve that dream. Um, but yeah, shy of having a real working magic wand, I need to find a way to fulfill my inner nerd's deepest wish, which is that I could just read books and research studies all day long, and then I just distill that information into something for you guys. Um, Certainly, if I may ask a favor, nay, a birthday present, if there's ever a video of mine that really helps you or resonates with you, if you wouldn't mind sharing a video of mine in any of your Reddits or YouTube or Facebooks or whatever, that might really help me a lot because really, like, I could just do this off of YouTube ad revenue, but it's not going to happen with 50,000 subscribers. Like I said, I make like maybe $150 a month off of ad revenue right now, which is not enough to sustain myself and my family. But you know, if someday I become a starlet and I have 1 million subscribers, then maybe YouTube could be my full time gig. But you know, between now and then, I have to juggle like, all right, how much time and effort can I pour into producing the YouTube videos, and how much time and effort do I need to spend on like other revenue generating activities like patient appointments and course sales in my business. And that's always just an ongoing thing, I think, for me at least, and probably every business owner. Let's see. Ashley says, super new, so may have missed if it was already done. Thank you for doing this live. What about gut repair for celiacs, or would that also be FODMAP related? Ooh, yeah, and then I think that this one might be the grand finale question, unless if same offer. If anybody has a topic idea for future videos, I'm all ears. If you still want to put that in the comment section, you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, I think I'm going to answer Ashley's question and then we're going to wrap it up. So I don't think I would do low FODMAP necessarily. Actually, I might even go the opposite direction. So and I'll say this first. I've been gluten-free since 2010, and I'm reasonably sure that I'm a celiac myself. The thing is, I had the transglutaminase antibodies on blood work, but then I just stopped there and I never proceeded with the endoscopy and like an official label from a GI doctor. Um, the only reason I'm not fully vested in that transglutaminase antibody blood test is it did come from a functional lab. It didn't come from LabCorp, Quest, Kaiser hospital kind of labs. So that's my only kind of hesitation is like a lot of people I've talked to are like, oh, if you have the antibodies, you have celiac disease. And I'm like, yeah, but it was a functional lab. Like, anyway, I probably should have at least confirmed the antibody finding with like a LabCorp draw, but I didn't. But regardless, I am reactive to gluten still to this day. That's one of my lingering projects, maybe to get back one day. But I'm reasonably sure I'm a celiac. So I think actually I would go the opposite direction potentially. So a downside to the gluten-free diet that has been repeatedly shown in research studies is that the gluten-free diet is a relatively lower fiber diet. Whether we want to admit it or not, wheat, barley, and rye are the number one prebiotic fiber source in the American diet. So when you take a population of people who, I'm going to use the United States right now, but it's probably similar in other developed countries. 95% of people in the United States do not get enough dietary fiber. Then you take somebody from that population and then you reduce their fiber even further by having them go gluten-free, right? And I think this is particularly the case if they go gluten-free on their own and they don't work with a dietitian and do detailed nutritional tracking, right? Like if you worked with a dietitian and you did tracking, then the dietitian probably would be helping you quantify and understand and track your fiber intake. But if you go gluten-free on your own, like I did, there's a really high likelihood that you just went from a low fiber diet to an even lower fiber diet. And then that's going to cause dysbiosis and symptoms and all sorts of problems. And if you were to go deeper into the restriction with a low FODMAP diet, you're just going to deepen that same problem, right? It's like population consuming a low fiber diet, then you take away the wheat, and then you take away the FODMAPs, and you're basically left with hardly any fiber at that point. And that's just going to make dysbiosis way worse. So I think unless you had a really good reason to try low FODMAP, knowing that you have to be gluten-free because of celiac disease and you're trying to heal your gut, I would actually go the opposite direction. And I would experiment with tracking your fiber intake with, like an app like MyFitnessPal or Chronometer. I would track dietary fiber, get a handle on how much you have currently in your diet. And then if you need to up your fiber, I would start doing so through foods or supplements or both. But I would be focusing mostly on making sure that you're getting enough fiber and preferably a diverse array of fibers in your diet. And I would focus on that. I think that if you restrict further by going low FODMAP, I think that you're going to just deepen the hole. And that's often what happens with people. I see people, and even this happened with myself. I went gluten-free and dairy-free. I was like, okay, cool. That helped me feel a bit better. And then some other symptoms popped up and got worse or were still present. I was like, oh, maybe I need to cut out all the grains. Oh, I still have diarrhea and bloating. Oh, maybe I need to go AIP. Oh, maybe blueberries are bad. And it's you dig yourself a deeper and deeper hole with that, unfortunately. And I see that pretty commonly. But yeah, I would actually emphasize, make sure you're getting enough fiber first and foremost. I think if you're a celiac and you don't feel tremendously better on a gluten-free diet and you're kind of like stalling as far as your progress goes, I would try to up the fiber first. And then down the road, you could experiment with like a reduced FODMAP diet, just cutting out some of the big offenders like beans and garlic and onion and see if that helps. But yeah, I probably wouldn't recommend a strict low FODMAP diet unless you had a really good reason to do so. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Glad it makes sense. All right, gang. Well, like I said, last call, ideas for videos. Actually, I might actually add yours. Gut repair for celiacs. Because all that I just rambled on about for 5 minutes, that could have been a video right there. Gut repair for celiacs. And then, I think probiotics, prebiotics, I think there's a lot of other potential angles there too. But I don't think that the healing the gut with celiac disease, I don't think it's going to be profoundly different than healing the gut in general. I think the only thing is, like, if you had really bad celiac disease and you're fresh off a diagnosis and you had villus atrophy and your villi are shaved down to nubs, I think it's just you might need higher doses of some of the stuff like L-glutamine, for example, and you might need to take it for a longer period of time versus a run-of-the-mill gut healing type person. But otherwise, I think the bones of it should be basically the same. So yeah. Yeah. Ooh, what I eat in a day to support my microbiome. Ooh, that I feel like that's going to put me right with the little teeny boppers. Follow me, what I eat in a day. But yeah, that actually, I like that. What I eat in a day to support my microbiome. I love that. Oh my gosh. And I will confess, one benefit of that, thank you, Mike. But one benefit of that is that is relatively easier to produce quickly because, like I said, there's some projects like the biofilm project where it's going to take me a while to do the PubMed search, read the articles, make sense of it, digest it, and turn it into something usable for YouTube, right? Like the biofilm project, for example, that's a big project to try to work on. But what I eat in a day to support my microbiome, like I could do that. Like I could do that today. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that idea. Now you better watch the damn video, Mike, because it was your idea. I'm gonna be I'm gonna be troubled if I don't see a comment from the brains behind the video. Okay. Yes, thank you. Ooh, thank you. You guys have learned. You guys have learned fast. All right, gang. Well, like I said, it is 10 bajillion degrees here in North Carolina. I can tell that the AC is struggling to keep up because it is hotter than Hades in my office right now. I was very, very happy to have this, like a freezer gel pack wrapped in a towel here. I was very glad to have this. I put it on my lap at least 10 times over the course of the last 2.5 hours. Holy guacamole. But yeah. Oh, Julio, my friend with the coolest name, says, "Hope you do more live streams. Very informative." Yeah. I liked the nature of this one. I will confess, sometimes live streams can be a little bit draining when it's just nonstop question, like clinical questions. But I feel like we had enough fun and banter and silliness in this one that it made it pretty enjoyable for me. So yeah. Mike said he has notifications on for my channel. Thank you. Yeah, that's another way you can help. Obviously, if you're not a subscriber, like friggin' subscribe, people. Doesn't cost you a nickel to subscribe, and it helps me a lot. But yeah, if you turn on notifications, that's awesome. And then, like I said, if there's a video or something that I've shared over the years that was really helpful for you, if you could share that in a relevant Facebook group or Reddit thread or whatever, I would really appreciate that too. Because yeah, just trying to get the word out there. And like I said, if I could put all of my time and energy into producing YouTube videos, I absolutely would. It's just right now, YouTube alone doesn't pay the bills. But someday if I get up to 1 million subscribers and I have the ad revenue to justify doing YouTube full time, then maybe I could get up to doing more videos. Because I'll tell you, let's see. This is my final closing remark. Okay, so hold on. Okay, 60 plus 74. There's a few I've already done. Plus about another 70. Ooh. Plus another 90. Like I'm just looking at the different tabs on this Google sheet that I keep with ideas. Oh, plus another 12 here. Oh, shoot. Gosh darn it, Nikki. Plus another 60 on this tab. Anyway, you get the idea. So I'm hardly out of ideas. I think the problem for me right now is, like I said, a lot of the ideas I have happen to be really juicy and require more time and effort than I've been able to do in recent years, just juggling all of the things. So someday, when I'm able to make YouTube my full-time gig, I'll look forward to making. I mean, I didn't even count all that. That was probably what, 200 or 300 video ideas that I just rattled off, all those numbers. So someday, if I could make YouTube my full-time gig and just sustain myself off of ad revenue, then I will. What what's the slang the kids use now? I will keep you well fed, as the youths would say. I will keep you well fed. But the way that you can help me grow this channel is um, subscribing. If you want to do notifications, it's great. I'm honored. Thank you. Um, leaving a nice comment on any video that you watch helps the algorithm. If you actually like the video on YouTube, that helps with the algorithm. And then if you can share a video in like a Reddit thread or a Facebook group, like that also helps get the word out and helps these videos reach people who need them and helps me grow the channel. So thank you in advance for any of those things that you could do, because it really does help and make a difference. But all right. Well, guys, like I said, it has been 2.5 hours. And I am not only melting into a puddle, but also I've got a nice little knot right here, which is telling me that even though I'm sitting in my little ergonomic stool here, I think that my body is craving a little bit of movement, and I'm gonna get a nice knot in my shoulder if I sit here for too much longer. So that's a wrap on the first live stream in quite a while. So thank you guys for being here. You were all so nice. I really appreciate all your lovely comments. Yeah, I strive to be chill. I think I'm generally a pretty chill person. Thank you for that, Mike. Yeah. Thank you, Julio. Love your screen name again. I'm going to remember that one for sure moving forward. That and you, Mike Walter, for sure. All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon, and hopefully I'll have a video for you in, I'm not going to put a timestamp on it, but hopefully I'll have a video for you sometime in the near future. Bye.